shared awareness or creating a common operating picture. Now, a lot of that is dependent on the first person's ability to communicate with words that paint powerful pictures of understanding in the mind of the receiver of that information. Stay tuned. Coming up on this episode, it's part one of a two-part show where I address over 40 questions that were asked by more than 700 attendees of the free Situational Awareness Foundations course I offered last week. But first, let's hear from our amazing sponsor, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire, a factory direct manufacturer. That means no middleman. You work directly with the good folks right at their factory in Laverne, Minnesota. If you want to see just how easy it is to design your own Midwest Fire truck, check out the Create a Spec tool on their website. To get started, go to MidwestFire.com and click on the Create a Spec tab at the top of the homepage. Hello and welcome to episode 316 of the Situational Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. Hey, a quick note here on the front end. If you're thinking about hosting a situational awareness program when the pandemic is over, now is the time to get it on the calendar. I'm actively booking programs for fall of 2020 and actively booking 2021 programs now as well. I had 44 programs postponed and they're now rebooking, and there's a lot of pent-up demand for training. So if you're even thinking about hosting a program, head over to the website, samatters.com, and click on the Contact Us tab, and I'll contact you. Today's feature segment is sponsored by the Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. The Online Academy trains and certifies members on situational awareness skills essential for improving high-risk decision-making outcomes. To learn more about this highly acclaimed program, visit samatters.com and click on the Online Academy tab under the Training section at the top of the homepage. Today's program is part one of a two-part show where I will be addressing the questions asked during the free Situational Awareness Foundations program I offered 14 times last week. In case you missed those programs, you can go back and watch last week's show, episode 315, where I recorded the event and put it out as a show episode. And before we get started, I just want to let you know that all of the training programs that I was doing live are now available in the virtual format. I can customize programs as well for your organization. So to learn more about virtual training programs, visit samatters.com, click on the Virtual Training tab under the Training Programs header at the top of the homepage. For those of you who subscribe to the SA Matters newsletter, I'll be sending out information periodically about virtual training programs, including special offers for online training. Finally, if you're new to the show, stick around after the feature segment is over, and I'll tell you more about how to get connected with our mission and how you can host a live or virtual event. All right, let's jump into our feature segment, part one of my two-part episode, where I address the questions from the free Situational Awareness Foundations course, which was episode 315 from last week. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for this Q&A session. It might be beneficial for you to go back and listen to last week's show where I rebroadcasted the Situational Awareness 101 or Foundations course that I delivered 14 times for free the previous week for anybody who'd sign up. We had over 700 people sign up for that. And during those 14 sessions, they asked a pile of questions, more than 40. I don't remember the exact number, but what I'm going to do is in the next two episodes, this one and the next, I'm going to address those 40 questions. So for the benefit of those who attended and didn't hear all the other questions asked, and for the benefit of anybody who watches episode 315 that might want to learn more about the topic in a little more in depth, and that's what the questions allow for. All right, so let's jump in to answering those questions. Is there any way to improve access to the 95% subconscious memory database? The answer is yes. The more emotional connection you have to information, the easier the highway is to travel down to access that information. The more repetition cycles that you have to information, the easier it is for you to access that information. That's why emotional events tend to be easy for us to recall, and sometimes in very vivid detail. And it's why it's recommended that you study information that you want to remember for the long run, because the studying is repetition cycles to information. So the more repetition cycles there are, the smoother the highway or the access is to the information storage in the subconscious. How can I multitask better on serious incidents where I'm trying to monitor multiple radio channels and I need to make decisions based on information shared on those multiple radio channels? Well, that's a great question with kind of a bad news answer. Humans cannot consciously multitask the act of paying attention. In other words, our mental sketchpad cannot draw multiple simultaneous pictures of understanding at the conscious level. It can only draw one picture at a time. So if you're listening to two simultaneous conversations, what your brain will do is it will alternate listening from one to the other, back to one, back to the second one. Now, it can do this quickly, giving us the belief we're multitasking, but what we're actually doing is single tasking in an alternating way. Listen to channel one, then some of channel two, then some of channel one, and so on. The problem is while we're listening to channel one, we're not comprehending the meaning of the information coming over channel two. And vice versa, when we're listening to channel two, we can't comprehend the meaning of information coming over channel one. So if you're having to make decisions based off of information coming over shared multiple radio channels, it's a setup for failure. The best case scenario would be to try to have that traffic on a single channel, or have a second person listen to the second radio and then glean the important messages and then share those important messages with the person who's having to make the decisions, but not while there's radio traffic coming over the first channel, because they would only then be listening to the person who's giving them the second radio traffic and not listening to the first radio. So we cannot multitask the act of paying attention, which includes listening to multiple consecutive radios. How can I avoid getting tunnel vision? We first have to pause and talk about what tunnel vision is. Tunnel vision is a narrowing of your visual field down to one tiny little geographic space. And when the attention narrows, you're losing your peripheral vision. All of your peripheral vision goes black, and your whole field of vision narrowly focuses down to one tiny little space. Very few people have ever truly experienced true tunnel vision. Although we use the term loosely, most of the time what somebody is talking about is a narrowing of their focus, but not true stress-induced tunnel vision. So when you have to avoid stress-induced tunnel vision, we can try to prevent ourselves from becoming reaching the tipping point for stress, where we go to the point where so many of the brain chemicals that get released under stress overpower us and then cause this narrowing of our visual field, causing tunnel vision. So we can do two things. We can use tactical breathing technique, which is breathe in on a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, breathe out on a 4 count, stop breathing for a 4 count. Tactical breathing increases ever so slightly the carbon dioxide level in the blood and decreases the oxygenation ever so slightly. And there is an organ inside the brain that controls the stress reaction, and what makes it go crazy is oxygenation. The more we oxygenate it, the crazier it gets. Think of somebody who's hyperventilating. That extra ventilation through hyperventilation causes an over-oxygenation, which causes a stress and anxiety reaction. So what we try to do is slow their breathing. Back in the olden days when I was an EMT, they used to have them breathe into a paper bag, which then has them re-breathe their carbon dioxide, which then calms everything down. So a tactical breathing. The second way is stress inoculation training, to train in ways that are highly stressful so that we learn to manage through our stress when we're in real scenarios. This is what the military and special forces does, is train soldiers in highly stressful combat type simulated scenarios so that when they're in the real scenario, they're used to that level of stress because they've trained how to think and make decisions in that high stress environment. So inoculating themselves to being under stress. How can I instill better situational awareness in other people? Well, situational awareness is kind of an inside job. A person develops their own personal situational awareness, and the best way to help somebody do that is to make sure that they understand the principles about how to develop the 3 component parts of situational awareness: perception, understanding, and prediction. And I can't think of a better way. It's going to sound self-serving, but the episode is completely free, so I'm not trying to benefit off of you financially, but to send them back to last week's episode, to 315, and have them listen to or watch that episode to understand the foundations of the 3 component parts to situational awareness. Now, there is one thing that a person can do to help someone else develop situational awareness, and that is the creation of shared awareness. Shared awareness is where one person shares their understanding of what is happening with another person and hopes to help that second person develop strong awareness based on the first person's awareness. So it's essentially shared awareness, or creating a common operating picture. Now, a lot of that is dependent on the first person's ability to communicate with words that paint powerful pictures of understanding in the mind of the receiver of that information. And some people are very good with communications, and their words are like Picasso. They make beautiful paintings in the minds of the receivers. Some people are such poor communicators that their words are like abstract art, and it's very difficult to understand the meaning of what they're trying to say. I'm sure it makes total sense to the person who's saying it, but the person on the receiving end simply just can't put those words together, put those mental puzzle pieces together to understand. And then that actually ends up causing that second person not to develop strong awareness, but to become confused. What is the relationship of mindfulness to situational awareness? Mindfulness is an important component of situational awareness because the more mindful we can remain in the moment, the better our ability to capture clues and cues and information about what's happening around us. There's a concept that I use, or the term that I use, is meta-awareness. Meta-awareness means being in the conscious moment, being aware of your awareness, being aware of how good your perception is, how good your understanding is, how well you are making predictions about future events. Because in the moment, our mind can go many, many, many different places. So mindfulness of awareness allows us to keep the concepts of situational awareness front and center, which then, as just a matter of practice, will improve our awareness. Are there stress management and or mindfulness techniques that can help reduce task fixation? Well, task fixation occurs when you get narrowly focused on one task that you're performing. And if it's only for a short period of time, we call it focus. But if it happens over an extended period of time, it can turn into fixation. And when we get fixated on a task, we can lose track of time. We can lose track of everything that's happening around us. We can filter out all the other inputs. We can get to the point where we're not even listening or hearing anything that's happening around us because we're so narrowly focused on the task that we're performing. So one of the things that we can do is to periodically unlock from the task that we're performing and take in the big picture, to just disconnect from that which we are all focused on and look around and listen around. And when you look around and listen around to the bigger picture, you will see and hear things differently than when you were fixated. Are there particular populations, such as persons with attention deficit disorder or mental illness, who are prone to fixation on a task, or who might benefit from situational awareness training? Well, I think everyone could benefit from some baseline understanding of situational awareness training. Any other challenges aside, I think the better we understand what situational awareness is, how to develop it, how to maintain it, the more we learn about the barriers that flaw awareness, then the easier it is to be able to develop and maintain it. Now, there are some populations that are predispositioned to have some special challenges as it relates to awareness. And you mentioned a couple of them, attention deficit and mental illness, but there's also medications that can impair a person's ability to remain in the moment. I have personally not done a lot of research in the area of connecting situational awareness to attention deficit or connecting situational awareness to mental illness. So I can't speak with authority. I could make some guesses and speculations, but I'd rather base the answers that I give on what I know is the research. And there may be research on this, on the ADD or mental illness connection, but if there is, I'm not aware of it, and therefore I don't want to speculate or guess what I think the answer should be. But maybe this, if you have a particular interest in that connection, you could look to scholarly journals for yourself and see if there might be something specifically there for a specific type of mental illness or ADD or ADHD as it connects to the topic of situational awareness. How long is information kept in short-term memory? For instance, when I'm driving and I see a number on a light post in the next town over, that may not be kept in my brain for longer than a few moments, and then it's gone. That is true. We do not remember chapter and verse of every experience that we have. What the brain is more likely to remember is the gist of an experience. For example, the brain might remember that you made a trip and went through that town, but it wouldn't remember every detail of every piece of information you captured, unless you had some emotional connection to that piece of information. If you had a deer run out in front of you and you almost hit it, you might have a longer memory of that deer you met on that roadway going to that next town versus the sign that was on the pole that you had no emotional connection to. Now, the more repetition cycles you have to information, the more likely you are to remember it. So if you drove through that town repeatedly and saw that sign on that post repeatedly, then asked sometime in the future what is on that sign, it might be easier for you to recall the numbers that were on that sign if you made note of that in repetition cycles each time you went through that town. How do my experiences get from my conscious memory to my subconscious memory? The process by which conscious memories make their way into long-term memory is a process called consolidation. And we consolidate memories while we sleep. People think that when we sleep to rest, which is partially true. The body rests, but the mind does not. The brain is more active when we're sleeping than when we're awake. Well, what possibly could the brain be doing while we're sleeping that would be more active than when we're awake? It's consolidating memories. It's taking the experiences that we've had since our previous waking period and finding that place in memory where that experience belongs. So if you have a disruption in your sleep cycle, that can impact your brain's ability to consolidate the experiences of a day into long-term memory, because the process of consolidation is broken when a person is awakened, like a first responder being dispatched to an emergency in the middle of the night. And then there's scientific evidence that shows disrupted sleep cycles impact memory recall of the lessons of the previous day. What are some things I can do to bring myself back into the present if my mind starts to drift in a high-risk situation? Well, the first thing you'd have to do is to realize that your mind is adrift in a high-risk situation. And just merely realizing that is probably going to bring you back into the conscious moment. Now, oftentimes what causes us to realize that our mind is adrift is something happens that jolts us back into consciousness. So, for example, you're driving your car down the highway, which can be rather routine and sometimes boring, and the mind can drift away and be thinking about other things while your subconscious mind drives the vehicle for you. But have an animal dart out into the roadway in front of your vehicle, you will be startled back into consciousness, of which your brain will then have to process the meaning of the visual inputs, the animal running across the road, send a message up into the brain that says, what should I do? And then decide what to do and perform an action. That difference between the input of that information and then the output of an action is what we call reaction time. How long it takes a person to react to a piece of stimulus coming into one of the senses. So if you're in the moment paying attention, your reaction time will be quicker. If you are drifted away and your mind is on something else, your reaction time will be slower because your brain has to be brought back into the conscious moment to process the meaning of that information, to then search for a solution that then gets turned into an action on what to do. One of the things you can do to help keep yourself remaining mindful in the moment to perhaps avoid mind drift is to have a conversation with yourself about what is happening in the environment around you. That conversation can be internal, or you can literally externally talk to yourself, although that can get a little awkward in the presence of other people. But people have reported having better mindfulness and less mind drift when they talk themselves through what they're doing, where they're at, what steps they're taking. If you're driving, talking yourself through, hey, I got a car that's coming up to me on the rear of my vehicle. It's a white car. They appear to be traveling faster than I am, so they're probably going to try to pass me, but it's a 2-lane road. Depending on how much of a hurry they're in, they might try to do an evasive maneuver that could potentially cause an accident. So I should be more aware and paying attention to what that vehicle is doing until they successfully pass me, or maybe I'll even slow down or even pull off the road a little bit to the right and turn on my turn signal to indicate to them that they can pass me. This kind of internal dialogue can help you to stay mindful in the moment. Is déjà vu a form of intuition? So as we talked about intuition in the program, we talked about feeling intuitive responses. Intuition is knowing without knowing how we know, and we feel intuitive knowledge. And I gave some examples during the program as to how we feel intuition. Déjà vu is a form of intuition because we feel déjà vu. If you've been somewhere and you feel like you've been there before, that feeling is a form of intuition. Now, it could be that you actually have been there before. Now, there's some people that think that intuition or déjà vu is a result of reincarnation. That's not exactly true. Déjà vu results from a pattern match from something that's happening in your current environment, matching something that has happened or has been present in an environment that you have been in before. So say you walk into a building and you're looking around and you get this feeling you've been there before, but you haven't been there before. Your brain has captured some inputs from that environment. It could be the pattern of the carpet, the pattern of the wallpaper, maybe it's the light fixtures, and it's sent that data into the brain, and in the subconscious, you have a stored memory of a similar, if not exactly same, carpet pattern or wallpaper pattern or light fixtures. And when the brain matches the current experience to the previous experience, you can get a déjà vu experience, a déjà vu feeling that you have been there before when in fact you have not. What happens when a person's life flashes before their eyes? So we've talked about when our brain is trying to find solutions to problems, it searches the subconscious memory database. It's looking through past experiences, it's looking for past trainings, it's looking for solutions to problems. And what it can do is it can literally access some of those past experiences and bring those experiences into consciousness. We can literally experience the early event in our life on our mental sketch pad as if it is real, as if we're experiencing it in the real time. So basically our field of vision goes black, and what we see is what is on our mental sketch pad. And it doesn't happen for everyone, and we're not even sure why it happens at all or how it happens at all, but a person's past experiences can come into consciousness, and they can literally see those experiences play out, like from childhood or as a teenager, in their mind while they're in a very high risk, high consequence situation. And they'll say their life flashed before their eyes. Is age a factor in memory and recall? Yes, it is, but I don't think that comes terribly as a surprise to people, that the more we age, Think of the highways to information in our brain as just being like highways, you know, in a, like street highways. The more they get used, the more they're maintained, the easier it is to drive up and down those highways. The more those highways get used in the brain, the easier it is for us to access information. And as we get older, the highways can start to deteriorate. And as they deteriorate, it can literally cause a highway to get closed off to the point where we can't access information at all anymore. What keeps the highways open and well maintained is keeping the brain's learning and exercised well. So just like we exercise the body, we exercise the brain with reading, with exercise, by doing puzzles like Sudoku or crossword, things that keep us readily accessing stored information, makes it easier to recall. Unfortunately, as some people get older, they read less, and that might have to be a function of how their eyes work, or they just become more sedentary, watch more television, and become less physically active, which then reduces access to information. I get very excited when the pager goes off for a call and can get tunnel vision. How can I avoid that? Well, based on my earlier discussion of tunnel vision, I'm not exactly sure that what you're getting is tunnel vision, because that would take a tremendous amount of stress to cause you to get tunnel vision when the pager goes off. What I think you're experiencing is maybe a hyper vigilance or a hyper state of excitement when the pager goes off, which then might impact your ability to think and make decisions, which is not terribly uncommon. In fact, I think I probably suffered from some of that earlier in my career as well. And it was just a matter of being so excited about being able to go on a call that sometimes I didn't, seem to keep my wits about me. So hearkening back to stress inoculation training and the tactical breathing technique to try to keep yourself calm, and maybe even use some internal self-speak, to talk yourself into a calmer state to keep yourself from becoming overly stressed or overly excited when the pager goes off. Since short-term memory is limited to 5 to 7 pieces of information, what happens when there's more than 5 to 7 inputs? Great question. So the information coming in and out of short-term memory is always changing. Some of the short-term memory information just kind of gets dumped into the trash. It's the fine details of things that we don't need to know. The brain tends to hold on to the big picture things, or the kind of the gist of things. And some of that gist level some of the minute detailed information just gets lost. Some of the gist level information can start its way toward long-term memory storage, which still allows us to recall it back, and some of it is just forgotten. So as we know that we only have a limited capacity of short-term memory, we can extend that by writing things down. If we write things down, we don't have to remember it anymore. We only have to remember where we wrote it down at. And for some people, that can be a challenge. But once you write it down, you can just release it out of short-term memory to make room in that buffer for more information. The more you pull information back and recall it, the more likely it is to to be readily accessible to us. That's the repetition. The problem with short-term memory is the brain is not very good at prioritizing what is important from what is not important. So it can hold something in the short-term memory buffer that is really not an important piece of information, but it can hold on to it as if it is, and then some piece of important information that might need to try to get in and be held in your short-term memory might just get rejected and go straight into the trash can. In which case, then you'll say, well, that never happened, or I don't have any memory of that happening, even though it was something important. It just didn't uptake into your short-term memory. What can I do to make the process of situational awareness development second nature so that I can do it without thinking about it? Practice is the best answer I can give to this. The more you practice the three-component process for developing and maintaining situational awareness, the more it becomes second nature, the more it becomes automatic. I'm to the point, and I'd like to think there's a lot of people like me, that it's not really even something that I think about consciously, that it just happens now for me as a matter of routine or automatically. That I have this meta awareness about my perception, and I'm more vigilant about the things that happen around me, and I'm always asking myself those questions that I went through in the program, in the understanding part and in the prediction part of situational awareness. It just is a habit developed through the repetition cycles of practicing. The more we practice anything, the better we get at it to turn it into second nature. And that's what I would say about developing and maintaining situational awareness. Does the 5% information held in conscious memory database change? Yes, it's changing all the time. Sometimes the information that's held in the 5%, if it is not substantial or consequential or emotional, can just fall out and be forgotten. And some of it will make its way toward consolidation, toward long-term memory, and then leave the short-term memory database. And so the information that's coming and going, which, by the way, even a 5% conscious database is extremely large. So don't be fooled by that it's just a very small plate that we hold information on. If you think about everything that we could consciously recall, that's a massive amount of information. I mean, it's dwarfed in comparison to long-term memory, but it's still a very, very large database. And direct to the question is that information always changing? The answer is yes. What is coming in and out of the 5% database changes over the course of time. Just think about like when you were a child, the things that were in your 5% database might have been, when are we going to eat? Where are my favorite toys? And can I go play with my friends? And as you become adults, well, maybe we're going to eat, maybe still stays in there. But the things that are the most important in your conscious database changes not only over the course of time, but also changes based on the varied environments that you're in and the information that you're capturing and holding in consciousness. Can I access all parts of my subconscious database? Well, you ask this question as though you control it. And the truth of the matter is you don't control it. It happens at the subconscious level. If you can control the access to data, that's conscious memory access. So the answer is you can't consciously control the access to that information. And short of problems like we talked about earlier with aging or brain deterioration or medications or illness, physical or mental illness, or other types of afflictions, the brain, the healthy brain, is able to access the entire subconscious memory database when it's doing the long-term file searches. But there are things that can happen that can inhibit the access to that information. So young, healthy, non-impaired brains will have an easier time accessing the subconscious memory database, and as we age it deteriorates, and I've addressed some of that. So but it doesn't happen consciously. It's all a subconscious access to the database. Since 2007, SA Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and 87,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you or someone you care about works in a high-risk, high-consequence, decision-making environment, then we are here to help improve their safety and their survival. I want to help you accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home to the ones who love you. Now, normally, this is the part of the show where I thank the organizations that have hosted situational awareness programs, and I would share a list of the upcoming programs. But the pandemic and social distancing rules have caused all of those events to be postponed. But I still want to thank the organizations that had programs scheduled, knowing that they'll reschedule on the backside of the pandemic. The Eastern Oregon EMS Conference in Pendleton, Oregon. The Kitsap County Training Officers Association in Washington State. The Spring Fire Department in Spring, Texas. The ExxonMobil Corporate School at the Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. The Creston Fire Department in Creston, British Columbia. The Fire Department Instructors Conference in Indianapolis, Indiana. Buckeye Partners. The New York State Fire and Life Safety Educators Conference in Montour Falls, New York. The Evans Fire District in Evans, Colorado. And the Midwest Fire Summit in Des Moines, Iowa. All of our programs, past, postponed, and future, are listed on the SA Matters website. If you're interested in seeing the list, just head over and scroll down the homepage about halfway to the red box that says Upcoming Events Schedule. If you're interested in hosting a program, virtual or live, when the pandemic's over, just click the Contact Us tab and I will give you a call. And remember to check out the show notes on how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on the social media channels of Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 316 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you to our platinum sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, the Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. Thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.